Golair, and welcome to the Loaf of Bread GAA podcast, slicing into the GAA of the past, present and future. Join me, Jason Keelan, as we cut into the largest loaf of bread known to mankind. On Slice 21 this week, we blow the final whistle on Loaf 1 of the podcast, with referees and all-round characters Barry Kelly, Niall Ward and Ken Bangie Gunning. We talk through where Bangie got his nickname, Barry's All-Ireland hurling final refereeing experience, Niall given a red card 4 minutes into a county final, Barry been mentioned on the two Johnnies, Bangie celebrating with Rochfortbridge in 2017, and a very special and unique Referee Banter Section. In it, I throw out some stories about them that were sent in by the listeners, which range from Bangie's apparent timekeeping issues, Samba Soccer, Niall scoring the greatest point ever in an under-16 county final, and why Westmeath legend and Shandonagh manager Kevin Hickey still holds a small grudge against his workmate Barry. But first, let's have a quick trip as usual for the final time this series through the lads' areas of Rochfortbridge, Garrycastle and my own home, Mullingar. Bon Sultas. It's a short journey home for us this week as we finish off the first loaf of the Loaf of Bread GAA podcast, back up through the Offaly border and over to Garrycastle in the western section of Westmeath. The first chat on this loaf was with the captain of the Westmeath team in 2004 under Paddy O'Shea, David O'Shaughnessy, who is of course a Garrycastle legend. And so too is this man, referee Niall Ward. In the chat you will hear Shocko make references to Niall and his playing days, so I leave that to him. Garrycastle is located in the town of Athlone, and for townlands it is relatively small. The likes of Blyree and Carton Troy are neighbouring townlands for the locals who are familiar with them. Indeed, given its size, it's no surprise to know that Garrycastle GAA wasn't founded until 1981 as a result of the increase in population in Athlone. It was men like Dan Hogan and Eddie Martin who helped organise alongside the Westmeath County Board. Within a year, the club had a junior title under their belts, but would soon find themselves at the wrong end of the junior championship before the turn of the decade. In 1988, the club found a permanent home for themselves. The club also holds a proud record of being the only winning Failing and Old club when they defeated Armagh side Cullyhanna in 1995. On their 20th anniversary, the club were crowned Westmeath senior champions, having been promoted to the ranks just 4 years previously, and having already tasted semi-final agony against Barry Kelly's local football club, Mullingar Shamrocks. The Flanagan Cup win was by the slimmest of margins over the senior veterans Terrell's Pass. They needed a replay to get to the final, having a tough time in Mullingar against the outfit of St Lomans. In the replay, Desi Dolan kicked 1-6, the same as the Lomans team scored. Considering Terrell's Pass, boasting the likes of Martin Flanagan in their ranks, had more than double scores to spare over Athlone, it was a big win for Garrycastle. Since then, the club has won a further 7 titles, including a 3 in a row from 2009 to 11. Perhaps the pinnacle of their success came in 2011, when the club won the Leinster title, the first and only one by a Westmeath team to date. 3 others tasted final defeats in the past before that, Athlone in 71, my own old club the Downs in 1972 and Terrell's Pass in 2007, while St Lomans lost the 2017 final in utterly bizarre circumstances. Garrycastle went into the final against St Bridget's of Dublin in Tullamore that day, having suffered defeat in the 2009 final against Portlaoise. But down in Tullamore that day, as I sat with a friend from St Bridget's, it looked done and dusted with 20 minutes left. Garrycastle led by 8. In injury time though, the teams were level, and only a last kick free by sub Conor Cosgrave, a debatable one to say the least, gave them the title. It added to the list of coaching successes for Galway man Anthony Cunningham also. The club, unsurprisingly, has had many representatives at county level, not only the likes of All-Star Desi Dolan and Westmeath 04 captain David O'Shaughnessy, but others like Cathal Mullen, Justin McAteer, Doran Hart, John Gaffey, Paddy Mulvihill and Desi's brother Gary, or even as far back as the likes of Kieran Ryan and Enda Nugent. Equally, the ladies setup has grown immensely over the years with the likes of Sarah Dolan, Grace Halligan and Lorraine Duncan on the county panel. The club continues to be a force in the county alongside the likes of Milltown, St Lomans, Rochfortbridge and Mullingar Shamrocks in the ladies game, but to name a few. And it is to Mullingar Town that we go next, and Barry Kelly's hurling club St Oliver Plunkets. Sadly, despite going back to the records of 1903 and the first county hurling final, there is no mention of Plunkets throughout, although there are several mentions of a Mullingar Shamrocks who won both the 03 and 04 finals. There is also a title in 1962 for Pearses, who were affiliated in the early foundations of Mullingar Shamrocks Football Club also. Indeed, this could provide some links to Plunkets in the past, but sadly no modern day senior title exists for the club. But they still remain one of the most recognisable teams in the county when it comes to the small ball code. The names of Lade, Dalton, Geraghty are synonymous with the club, particularly at underage level where they have achieved success such as the 2010 minor final hammering of Loughlin Gales. On that team that day was a young Aaron Craig who now plies his trade in Wexford with St Anne's but lines out for the county at senior level. In football links, Barry is involved with nearby Mullingar Shamrocks. In fact, for me it's hard to avoid the club. My next door neighbour is 1986 county final scorer and club chairman Sean Hines. Barry lives 100 metres away, and another legend, Dan O'Dowd, is around the corner. The club boasts many players past and present in their ranks who have lined out for the county. In the 1960s, the likes of Frankie Connaughton captained Westmeath Miners to Leinster alongside teammates Tommy Reeves and Dan O'Dowd, Railway Cup star Paddy Cole in 1968, and surnames which are simply Shamrocks through and through, like Casey, Joyce, Curley, Daly, Gavin, Ormsby, Caroon and O'Donoghue, but to name a few select ones. There is also the Moore family, Dean, Darren, Ned and others, and a man by the name of Conor Moore, who you might recognise.
I couldn't believe it. I was in the bookmakers earlier on, right? And we were 3-1 to win this game. 3-1. Now, for those of you who don't understand betting on there, right? If you go down to the bookies and you put €10 on, you're going to lose €10.
Barry himself has several honours, including the only intermediate title in the club's history in 1988, when he was part of the squad, despite his youth. But outside of the 4 All-Ireland finals he's refereed, perhaps Barry's greatest performance came on stage during the club's 2019 Sound of Musicals fundraiser, although word is he was outshone by a much younger man, Sean O'Kynes, who played John Travolta. On the ladies' side, the likes of Lisa Burke, Karen and Sophie Hegarty, Tara Fagan, Gemma Leahy, Anya Melody, Emma Morris and Linda Gilmartin have done and still provide the ammunition for the club, and also at county level, including being involved in the recent 2020 Intermediate All-Ireland final defeat against Meath and Croke Park. It would be remiss not to mention the club's incredible traditions at another aspect of the Irish culture, the score. The club novelty acts, singing, dancing and more have proven to be nationally recognised. In 2010, local stars Mary Irwin, Mary Hughes, Paul Doolan, Joe Early, Gemma McNamee, along with footballers Rob Ryan and Aaron Purcell, were crowned All-Ireland Novelty Act champions. Some more, perhaps wider known names associated with the club would be the likes of recent Laker Gale star Bernard Flynn, a man who literally lives around the other corner, a 2000 semi-final team that included one Niall Breslin, aka Brezzy, and singing sensations Niall Horan and Mark Irwin, two men who grew up in the same small estate the other end of the town. But perhaps the most famous clubman locally is one Michael Spike Fagan. Spike came from the traditional GAA household of the era, having been born in 1960 when his father banned him and his brothers for playing soccer. Spike lined out for Shamrocks from an early age and won the county title at under 14 in 1973, along with the likes of Conor Moore's uncle Ned. He would become the club and county's first representative with the Irish international rules team. He dazzled down in Perth and Melbourne and Adelaide in 1986 after winning his first senior title with Shamrocks, and was selected again for the Irish setup in 87 and 90. In 2000, celebrating his 40th year, Spike won his 8th county title with Shamrocks. His retirement in 2004 from playing culminated in one of the great GAA playing careers, spanning over 4 decades, county titles, playing under managerial greats like Kevin Heffernan, and going into coaching after. Of course, many will also know Spike locally for his weekly writings in the local paper. Shamrocks will continue to be one of the dominant teams in the county for many decades to come, and they continue to produce players for the county team. And finally, for this series, we make the trip out the road to the home club of Ken Bangie Gunning and Rochfortbridge. While my own personal links to the club stem from my brother, the club's history go way back. In many ways, it could be argued the ladies' team in Rochfortbridge held the dominance, as they were considered the strongest team in the county for a long time, and have contested 6 All-Ireland finals and amassed 7 Leinster titles. They are also the current ladies senior champions in Westmeath, yet despite this, somehow not too many of their team make the county panel. You can figure that one out. Names like Fiona Coyle, Cara McDermott, Megan Brick, Aoife Brady and Aoife Moran are the notable county stars. The men's club was founded in 1950 as an amalgamation of nearby Gibbonstown and the old Rochfortbridge Warriors Club, who still adorn the initials on the crest today. The old Warriors boast 5 senior titles, all between 1915 and 28, while the new St Mary's Rochfortbridge hold 3 between 1950 and 62. Incredibly, The Bridge nabbed their first title in their first year of existence with a 2-9 to 8 points win over Athlone. Over the next 2 decades, they would contest 8 finals. However, 1967 will be the last time the club's name appeared in a county senior final. In 2003, the club were relegated to intermediate level. Despite coming back up a year later, the club's lowest point came when relegation to junior in 2007 was confirmed. But over the years, the club has produced several county stars of note, including Derek Mitchell, Damien Gavin and Donal O'Donoghue. In recent times, Adam Nolan, Ken Delaney, Owen Gorman and Ned Cully have found spots on various Westmeath panels, while midfielder Sean Lester has experience of the senior setup of recent times. But perhaps the most dramatic moment in the men's game came on October 22nd, 2017, in the intermediate final against Shandonagh, who were managed by former Westmeath All-Ireland winning fullback Kevin Hickey. With Shandonagh's immense power and height looking like it was going to win out, the incredibly youthful setup of the Bridge showed in their ability to go the full term. From the wonderful youthful goalkeeper Fran Heavey in goals, to Owen Gorman and Paul Carey in the forwards, aided by 3 of the Cully family, the Bridge never gave up. With pace and skill in abundance from the likes of Eddie Alford and Peter Lawler coming forward, to the presence of Colin Gavin and Sean Lester in midfield, they clawed their way back into what seemed a lost cause. With the scores at 1-10 apiece and time running out, the ball fell on the terrace side to a name that you might recognise, Ian Keelan, my own brother. The rest, as they say, is history.
The ball in. It goes in to number 18. Ian Keelan has put Rochfortbridge into the lead. St Mary's Rochfortbridge now leads Shandonagh with 3 minutes left. It's St Mary's 1 goal and 11. Shandonagh 1 goal and 10.
For Barry, Niall and Bangie, being a referee comes with the usual territory, such as dealing with players and managers who always know better and saw everything from a better angle. The Air Sport documentary Men in Black that aired in 2014 showed the real difficulties of being the man in the middle. But whether it's refereeing in front of 20 people at a Junior D game or 82,000 on All-Ireland final day, the standards remain the same and the rituals remain the same in the referee's room beforehand, even if the referee's room in some cases might be the boot of the car. But while each referee has his or her own quirks in the ways they officiate, at the end of the day they aren't out to get anyone. Unless you feck them over at some stage in life, so then you're absolutely done for. And so with that, let's meet the men in the middle who are bringing an end to Loaf 1 of the Loaf-of-Bread GAA podcast. Barry Kelly, Niall Ward and Ken Bangie Gunning.
Cheers, Niall.
Well, Barry, how are things?
Good, thanks. No signs of the books, but I've already texted him a few months ago, so I presume he's okay. Bangie is the one you've been worried about.
So I believe, yeah, I've been told already, yeah.
I'm not worried about A, that he'd turn up, but B, what he might say. Hey, Bangie, you and I are a bit underdressed for this now. Wardy is taking suit on.
Look, and the hair brushed as well. Look,
sure, I'm only in the door.
Come here, Jason, one question. What kind of solicitor do you have on this programme? Because you're going to need him.
Well, after Pamela Greville and Mairead and them, I think I'm safe enough. If I have an accountant, that's about the height of it. I don't have a solicitor, so. And he's my brother, and Bangie knows him well.
I do.
I think he took Bangie's jersey.
Did he?
I think so.
Yes, no, you never played with the Bridge.
Me?
Yeah.
Several reasons. I was shy.
Perhaps because they never lived in the Bridge is one reason.
Well,
Harry
there's only one footballer on this road, because the other two never played. 47 county titles and they never kicked the ball in his life.
I have 5.
Bangie, I can claim of being a good minor.
That's a lot again. You were 17 medals.
I got out after 4.
I never played for the Bridge because I ended up in the Downs because that's where the lads were that I was friends with, and Ian ended up out in the Bridge because the same reason. So the highlight of my career, I think, was I kicked 3-8 against Shamrocks. But I was 14.
That's a good high.
I was 14 and the Shamrocks boys were 9. So.
Had you got a moustache then as well, no?
Me?
Yeah.
I've more than the 9-year-olds had anyway. So.
The reason Jesse's asking that is that Bangie had a moustache from 13 to 19.
And I was still playing under 12.
He's the only man, actually, when we're going to mention this later on, he's the only man in the history of coming to Munster to win a County Munster medal with a moustache.
You probably are, actually. Yeah, I have two of them, but I definitely didn't have a moustache now. I was barely in the photo for one of them because I was barely tall enough, I'd say, to get in the photo. So
Bangie left the County Munster final and you're off working for Jerry Sheridan the same evening.
He had shaving foam and razors in the bag.
He wanted to bring the County Munster Cup to Leicester's and they wouldn't let him.
the first one I have to ask, Bangie, one of our listeners asked where you got your nickname from.
I'll be honest, when I was young and I wanted to go to the toilet, and I'm talking at a very young age, I used to say that's where I was going to. I was going to do the Bangies.
I think that's answered that question.
I won't deny it, everybody knows it.
Right.
And that's how it stuck to me. Everybody from the mother and father to the teachers in school, that's all they ever called me.
Right. That answers that question. No, it's just I won't say, but somebody said I should ask who where the nickname came from. So
there is a lot of theories, but that's the real answer.
Right, okay. I'll remember that one. So no, I had a couple of people asking. So Barry, I suppose if I ask you of your 2006, 2008 and all the other All-Ireland finals, which one for you is the most standout?
I suppose, Jason, the first one, because I'm sure lads will tell you, the first county medal you win or the first of anything you do, like you kind of remember. And I suppose it was Cork going for 3-0 and Kilkenny wanted to stop them. And I suppose one thing that stands out afterwards is that Eddie Casey, that all the lads would know Eddie fairly well. He's a very high profile GAA man in the Midlands and beyond indeed. But Eddie met me after the game, maybe the following day, but Eddie walked across the pitch after the game. Back then, maybe you could go onto the pitch, but he walked across the pitch after the game and he said to me, "Good God Almighty," he said, "I couldn't see my shoes in the pitch." And I said, "Yeah, the grass is a bit long." And Sean O'Leary was a kind of a head man in Crow Park. And he came to me before the game, about an hour before the game. He said, "Look," he said, "the grass is a wee bit long, but look, it's fine." Now, I was my first All-Ireland. I wasn't going to start telling them to get the lawnmower out and start cutting, but I'd say now, put it this way, the grass was longer than you'd see for, say, maybe a local club game, maybe even a league game in Springfield or Garrycastle or Hurling. And the other one then was 2008 was the second. I'm not going to go to them all, but the 2008 one, because after about 15 minutes, the game was actually over. Like, Kilkenny right Waterford. I felt sorry for the Waterford lads because it was all over after about literally 15, 16 minutes. It was 2-5 to a point and Kilkenny were on fire. And just a question then of hoping that no one maybe got frustrated and pulled a bad stroke.
What about 2014 was the famous one? Bubbles had 97-metre free to win the game, and then Brian Cody had some things to say after. What was your take on all that?
Well, I suppose the Bubbles one kind of highlighted in a way, for me at least, that when the free was given, it was whatever, easily 80, 85 yards out. And when he struck it, like it went over the virtual post that Cozy, the umpire, was on, and so like when it would have gone over, didn't even go over the actual post, went over the virtual post, went over that. And I think they measured it afterwards. I think he struck the ball something like 117 yards, 117 metres, which is like, you know, you're talking about, you know, man, Bryson DeChambeau type golfing prowess, and he struck the ball so well. And it did go over the post, which means it was wide. And actually, I remember asking Cozy afterwards, if there was no Hawkeye, you know, what would you have given? He said it wasn't between the posts. He said I would have given a wide. He says, now I'm kind of glad Hawkeye was there because tough for an umpire to make that call when it was literally a matter of millimetres. But he did strike the ball, and I suppose that's something that has crept into hurling now in the last 6-7 years. Like, lads are striking at such prodigious distances that it's nearly almost changing the game slightly. You know, wing backs are now scoring, like Hegarty scored about a top score in the championship play this year, really, and he just flicking the ball over the bar.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Yeah, that the umpire would have said he would have given a wide. That's a good one. Yeah, Niall, yourself, you had the honour of the 2018 county final, Lomans and Shamrocks. Bangie's already laughing here in the corner. There was a red card after the first few minutes. What was your take on that game overall?
Well, as it was first and foremost, it was an honour to actually get the game, which was probably arguably in the history of Westmeath GAA, probably it's the first time, I suppose, it's the equivalent of Gary Castle at Loan playing in a county final, which would be our biggest one from a club perspective. But I suppose you knew going into it, it was going to be a big occasion. And I suppose Lomans were going for 4 in a row, and they were just on the foot of possibly should have been Leinster club champions the previous year. Riding high with Luke Dempsey, very fluent, strong county representation. Shamrocks had come from Section B that year, but actually refereed them in the quarter final that year against the Downs. And I remember saying to myself after that game, do you know what? There's something in them. You're not going to still. And I think they surprised many by beating Turles Pass in the semi-final, but they got through it. And I suppose going into that game, I would have anticipated the encounter that it turned out to be, in a sense that, you know, Lomans went in as kind of heavy favourites from a neutral perspective, but the derby element and I suppose Shamrocks coming from a lower base and gain an ascendancy in the right direction in terms of their performance levels were going up. I knew in my heart and soul it was going to be a contest. And I suppose then when I got to match day itself, I suppose the ground was heaving and it was a lovely sunny day, dry sod, and the game did start off at 100 mile an hour in terms of, you know, it was up and down stuff, and there was scores, and there was a few little physical things that kind of, as in two lads obviously came into contact, and I had my eye on them, and I had my kind of decision. I need to get to these two lads when the play stops, but the play actually continued for about 2.5-3 minutes before it stopped for a 45, and I had my mind made up to go down to deal with them and caution them accordingly. But something happened off the ball in that period and that I didn't see. And I suppose, thankfully, my umpires down at the apartment then, both of them caught it and they alerted me to it, and we went through it in detail. And I suppose it was a big call, 4 minutes into arguably the biggest county final of all. But I suppose when you look back on it, and in terms of the video, and I'm quite satisfied that the correct call was made from a team perspective, because I didn't have a line of sight on it. And I suppose your biggest worry as a referee is that maybe that you want to get the correct information to you, like, so I suppose it would be, I'll put it this way, Jason, if the man had stayed on the field, I probably would be regretting if he had stayed in the field. So when you look back at the actual incident itself in its entirety, there was a strike, and a strike, I suppose, in any man's language, especially when it's deliberate, which it was, it is a red card offence where it leaves you with very limited choice. But I'm just happy from point of view that you can look back and say that the correct call was made, because it was a key game decision on the day. And referees are measured on key game decisions. It turned out to be a cracking contest. I think I looked up at the clock with it was on 29-15, and I think the Shamrocks were up a point, and Lomans were applying serious pressure. And I suppose what's going through your mind is, a 1 point defeat to either team at that stage. But there was 4 minutes of injury time, but just Shamrocks got a break. On a counter-attack, went 2 points ahead, resulting kick-out came, and they shot one over the bar again. So all of a sudden, and they got another score again. So I suppose they put 4 points in it, but it was, I suppose, from looking back, it was really a 1 point game. Do you know what I mean? It's just that Shamrocks got, they just finished very strongly in the end, like, do you know what I mean? So, but it was very proud. I suppose on reflection, it was a very proud moment. Number one, to be appointed. Number two, to do it. And number three, I suppose, think that I got through it. Do you know, when everyone looks back? So it was a very proud moment. And so just that's that, I suppose,
Yeah. Was there much backlash?
Jason, just on that, and I know you're kind of, as referees, I suppose, like for any referee, no matter who you talk to, it doesn't matter what he's refereed, it is your worst nightmare in terms of you can deal with anything in a match. Like a team could score 2 goals in the first 2 minutes. That's grand. Like it's not nothing to do with you. But like when a lad is sent off that early in any match, And it doesn't matter whether he deserves it or not, like, because the law reckon they don't deserve it. Like, it does make the rest of your, like, Wardy had about another, including injury time, he did another hour to referee with a huge crowd. It was the biggest county final gate ever in Westmeath. And to try and not balance out the sending off, that's the danger. I mean, you could do a study, a PhD on this, in that you could look back over the Ireland finals where a lad was sent off, or any match, a lad was sent off, and then watch. And human nature, what comes into it, is that the referee tends to give every 60-40 free goes to the team that's 14, because it's almost like the referee is nearly saying, well, look, lads, the team at 15, you can't really argue, lads. You've got an extra man now. I can't give you, I'm not giving you everything, but human nature being what it is, I often see that. Like, the referee does not want to send a fella off, if at all possible, particularly that early on, because it just heaps huge pressure on the referee. In fairness, Ward, he said himself there, obviously him delayed because Shamrock won, but the rest of the game was refereed as if it was 15 versus 15. And that's the hard thing to do, because the tendency is then, as I said, just any little, a free corner forward and corner back going for a tumble of each other, I'm going to give that one to the team at 14 because, the crowd on my back already, and, it gives me a bit more leeway with, the players are onto me. Like, it doesn't matter, the fella can do the most obvious sending off, Malifog a fella in front of the whole crowd, and the crowd will still reckon the referee was in some way responsible. Like, so for any of us, send a fella off early on is, you don't want to do it. You want to try to avoid it if at all possible. And like, it does take courage to go and do it,
Do you find, Niall, when you're thinking about that final, do you, at any stage where you, like Barry said, were you at any point kind of mentally going, oh, Jesus, I'm after, you mightn't, think about it, you're going, I'm after doing this to Lomans now, do I have to do something like to level the field in some ways, or is it just you keep your integrity as much as you can?
In a normal, like, I suppose, maybe the fact that it was a county final, Jason, there was actually very little time to dwell on it because it happened, I suppose, in the 4th minute of the match. I suppose where I got a bit of certainty was that both my umpires were in undoubted territory as regards the decision, and we went through it actually, I think, 3 times before I finally went back up. And I suppose you look into the incident, and I think in hindsight we did a bit of preparation, as in I would have brought the 2 sets of umpires together for about 45 minutes to an hour and covered off, I suppose, different scenarios, and one of them being something that if I don't see it and ye see it, and how we procedurally go through it. So I suppose I would have fairly grilled the umpires on it in terms of the actual incident, and I would have went through it maybe 3 times. So I suppose at that stage, when I came to the verdict, I was satisfied with that they were not for turning. So I have to trust these men because they're with you week in, week out, And I suppose it was only 4 minutes gone, and I did realise it was a massive, massive call. So I suppose, thankfully, it was a county final in a sense that the game had to go on, and a county final is a quick type of event, as in the game can bypass you. So I had to kind of deal with the incident and move on straight away, because, as Barry said, there was 56 other minutes plus injury time. I think it could have played up on maybe 70 minutes in total in that game. So there was an awful lot more minutes and decisions to be made for the rest of that game. So I kind of had to dust myself down. And I suppose not only a referee in the game, the event and the atmosphere around Cusack Park, you don't get 5,500 people into Cusack Park every weekend. You're not going to. So you had to kind of call on your own mental kind of reserve and just keep going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the 3 of you come from clubs, I suppose, who have a bit of success. Bangie, what were the celebrations like in Rochfortbridge after that final in 2017? I suppose I have to give my brother a shout out for the last score of the game, the winning score. So,
well, I didn't have a whole lot to do with it, but I don't remember a whole lot of the celebrations anyway. But I know, look, for a small village like Rochfortbridge, it was great. Considering we were complete underdogs going into the 2017 final. Shandonagh, we were completely written off against Shandonagh. Shandonagh, there was nobody going to stop them. And I suppose that year with the bridge, in most of the games that year in the championship, we came from behind in every game. There was no game that we actually dominated or whatever. The sending off, I suppose, was in that final as well with young Tom Malloy was a big thing for Rochfortbridge, because at the time Tom was playing some serious football.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And it gave us some momentum then as well. And for them not to score for something like 27 minutes in the second half, it was a great achievement for the Bridge alone, just to hold them to that, because they were hockeying everybody that year. And we scored the last 7 scores of the game to win it by a point. So yeah, obviously there was huge celebrations. There would be, down the years, there would be, I suppose, a lot of people between the Bridge and Shandonagh that would be big into their football and they'd be best of friends, but when it comes to the Bridge and Shandonagh, they wouldn't be seen eye to eye. It was like a local derby with the Bridge and Shandonagh that year, and it was great celebrations.
Jason, on that, interesting that you mentioned there, whether Ian got the winning score, because he's the first man from the Bridge to get a winning score in the county final. There was actually a score, because the man in front of you there, Kenneth, got a score in inverted commas in a hurling final back about 21 years ago, and when he can claim now, it was as much of a score as Brian Morley's was against Offaly in 2004. And that's another point, because we get on to Kenneth's strong Offaly allegiance shortly. But anyway, Kenneth, do you want to talk about that score? I think was a Shandonagh umpire actually on the day.
Jason, it's bad when you have a Mullingar man saying it when it was a Mullingar team that was beaten in the final.
But Kenneth, it wasn't a score, Kenneth.
When you have a team with their jerseys and tops hanging up in the dressing room, champions 2000, and next they're going home with nothing. That's the best feeling ever.
You're still not addressing the point, Kenneth. Was it a score or not?
I've heard people say that it was more than 2 feet wide.
What was the referee's final score? That's the point here. You have 3 referees here. The final score of the referee's score was Bridges by a point.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
If Hawkeye was around Barry, he'd be in trouble, would he?
Well, actually, the problem would be that it was actually that far away that Hawkeye wouldn't have actually seen it. It wasn't beyond the Hawkeye screen. It was that far away.
Poor old Jimmy Weldon, one of the best referees that we'd had, he called it.
All right, we'll blame Jimmy for this one. Fair enough.
Jimmy called it.
Fair enough. I'll take that one. So, I suppose I don't know if some of you might know my uncle. Actually, I was wondering what your opinion of my uncle was. My uncle is Seamus McCormack. You might be familiar with him. Streamstown man, yeah. What do you know of him?
I know Seamus, brother.
I know Seamus from my underage days. I know Seamus. I'm 43. I know Seamus McCormack since I'm 12 years of age, Jason, because I gave him nothing but grief up to and including maybe 25, 26 when I stopped playing.
Right.
And Seamus has turned out to be, he actually, I need South Westmeath, a lot of the when I started refereeing, a lot of the South Westmeath games they played in Moat or Rosemount would never let you down to do the line or anything like that. So Seamus has been around and very decent fella, knows his stuff. He umpired at a very high level with Pat Fox as well for a year. Right, you must remember. So very clued in fella in terms of the game, and he gave a lot of service to Westmeath in terms of the refereeing, like, you know what I mean? So I think he's gone to the small ball in recent times in terms of Moat Golf Club is getting most of his time now with the small ball, isn't it?
Yeah, it has done for a long time.
Very keen on that.
He is. He's a bandit now as well. At the same time, he's beaten me several times to telling me he's playing off these handicaps. And yeah, I don't know if I believe a lot of it now, but he's a handy golfer, all right. In fairness to him.
Actually, Jason, you mentioned there what you mentioned about your uncle Seamus, and and you never went to a match nearly over a long period of time that Pat Fox was refereeing. And Pat Fox refereed at a high level as well, and Seamus was one of Pat's right hand men, and umpires. You nearly could do a program on umpires, because umpires also tend to be maybe personality wise, but to do with umpire's job, like, you tend to have a certain kind of personality, and the ones I know tend to be in a dressing room, and the lads who will verify this, like, they're always good crack and good characters, and they're very important people to have any referee, no matter where you're going. Westmeath have been lucky in that there's a good bunch of lads there, and probably in the Mullingar area at least 10 or 15 lads you could call on to go on, Wally come over with Loan, and he might have only 2 lads with him, and send a text to any referee from Kinnegad to Shandonagh, and you'd get, Tom Duffy and Cozy and Paul Revel, and look, I'm not going to name them all but umpires, just the unsung heroes. And actually, Wardy himself has kind of branched in that area now, because he's kind of does a good bit with Fergal Kelly at inter-county level.
Longford man himself.
Oh, he's nearly fit for now at this stage.
I'd get the fitness test Bangie first.
I see, Bangie, if it came to it now, and you, speaking of integrity actually a while ago with Niall, if it came to it now and you had to referee against Owen Gorman and he was back chatting, would you be afraid to send him off because he's family?
He'd be the first to go. He'd be the first to go.
He'd be the first to go.
I actually did put him off the field one day.
Really?
I was refereeing a challenge. I was refereeing a local challenge out in the Bridge.
Right.
And every time he thought he was going to have an easy time because I was refereeing it. And it was probably more hard on him than it was on anybody else. And eventually he got fed up and he started him out back. And the language wasn't great. So I just told him, there's the dugout, keep going.
What kind of reaction did you get off the family after that?
The family was fine, but the reaction from him wasn't great afterwards.
That happens. That happens at the best of times. So, Barry, I have to ask you as well, actually, Tomás O'Leary is coming on the podcast tomorrow night. A Grand Slam man himself, and you refereed the last time a Cork man won an All-Ireland minor title. What, do you remember much about that game?
Yeah, it was two against Galway. Like Galway had, it was Damien Hayes and Richie Murray. When Galway were very strong, Galway minors at that stage, where they all been very strong. They won the Ireland the previous year against Owen Kelly's Tipperary in '99. I was actually linesman that day. But in 2000 now, I remember with Tomás, and as I was said, in a good stead in his rugby career was his absolute blistering speed. Obviously he comes from a great Cork stock, and his dad was a lethal corner forward. We just had a tremendous speed, and they won the 11. Then the last year I refereed, the following year, 2001, as you mentioned, they won it. It's hard to believe that they haven't won a minor since, has it not?
No, the last Cork one, yeah.
Right, they obviously won they won the year 20 Ireland, or did this gone by in, I can't even think that, because I should know this, but
I'm trying to think hurling.
In terms of, Tomás obviously went on to have a professional rugby career, and he was picked for the Lions back in probably 2029, and then he obviously suffered a fairly horrific injury shortly after the Lions squad was named, and that kind of, obviously he recovered, but a bad ankle injury, broken ankle I think it was, and pace is obviously hard to recover from that. But yeah, Tomás came from great. His dad, of course, was an absolute legend. He was a corner forward, basically second to none, really. He was an absolutely fantastic corner forward.
Yeah. Would you kind of thrown out to Trevi, I suppose, speaking of like Tomás, I suppose, centre of attention, especially in the Grand Slam year, do you like being the centre of attention in many ways when it comes to games, say like a big call, like in a county final, that kind of thing? Does it bother you being the centre of attention, or is it something that you just, as you get on, you just take it as part of the job? Bangie, I suppose, when you send off Owen Gorman, you become the centre of attention, the family and the pitch. So
yeah, well, I suppose when, no matter what game you're refereeing from, we'll say up to under 14 level, I would always do my best not to send off anybody, and you try to explain to them where they're going wrong or whatever, things like that. But after that, in any other game, you're there to do a job, I suppose. And if it's an offence that deems a red card, you have no real choice but to do it. We don't like giving out red cards unless we have to give red cards.
What about you, Niall?
Well, sometimes you can become the centre of attention through no fault of your own. Yeah. So I suppose you have to kind of, eliminate that from your mind. You assess the situation that comes in front, especially when you have full line of sight on it. And you have to assess it, and you have to do the job accordingly. And I suppose maybe in the earlier days of your refereeing career, you learn by the decision maybe that you didn't kind of follow up on. Do you know what I mean? As in, and you're going home in the car, and that maybe makes you a little bit stronger and more resilient, because it does take a bit of courage to, especially I suppose when it comes to a straight red card offence in a big game, it does take courage to actually issue it. You're not going to, but there also has to be rationale and basis behind why you give it. You can't just give it
for the crowd.
There has to be some sort of rationale and basis behind every kind of big call like that, because it does have a big impact on the game, whether you like it or not. Like, you're not going to. So I suppose, but I suppose experience is a great ingredient as you go year on year, because you get more, I suppose, confident, and you get more happy with yourself. You're not going to, and you do what you have to do. And I suppose you're there to referee. You're there to referee and do it as transparent and as fair as possible. You're not there to. You often hear you're giving us nothing. You're not there to give anyone anything. You're there to do a job and to do it as fair as you can. Like, you're not going to. So, I think your experience definitely helps. The more games year on year, as various different situations crop up, your experience does kind of help. And I suppose referees are human, and they do genuinely, want to do the right thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes the right thing mightn't be the most popular thing to do, but it is fundamentally the right thing to do. Like, do you know what I mean? And we all get into, I suppose, situations where we won't be popular. Like, do you know what I mean? But again, I think doing the right thing, in your own frame of mind is the correct. Do you know what I mean? As I say, it's the ones that you don't. It's the decisions that you miss, or that you go home in the car afterwards. They're the ones where you learn maybe in the early part of your career. But if you want to kind of progress in refereeing at a higher level, you have to be seen to have the courage to make what the right call is, irrespective of whether gravitates towards a certain element of unpopularity or whatever the case may be. Like, just it's important that the right call is made, because that's what in the main everyone is looking for. Like,
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and Barry, what about you?
What's funny, Jason, actually, in Westmeath, like, I mean, between the three of us, we're probably looking at, I don't know, close to not far off 60 years of experience of refereeing between the three, maybe more even in Westmeath. And like, the number of incidents that I've seen where, you're kind of nearly looking to get off the pitch as quickly as possible, or you're looking to, look for where's the nearest exit. It might be down the tunnel, but along the side. Like, it just doesn't happen. There's a generally very respectful attitude. Yeah, of course, lads going to complain about frees, and we did it ourselves, and going to question decisions. But that's what makes the GAA. You mentioned in the intro to the whole podcast, Jason, that the biggest, the loaf of bread, but that such a huge part of Irish society is that it's because people actually care. Like, that's Rochfortbridge are playing in the county final, and there won't be a man, woman, or child left within 3 miles of the village. And they'll all have an opinion, and it makes the week and the winter even. That winter in Rochfortbridge in 2017, no more than the winter for Shamrock's people in 2018, or Gary Castle regular winters in the last 20 years. It shortened the winter, and it makes life, just makes life easier, and you get a great buzz out of it. Like, where other matches you might watch, just like, even the club means everything, really. In Westmeath, we don't win a whole lot, maybe inter-county wise, but you ask anyone I'd say it'd be a good question to ask Wardy, actually, and maybe I'm not putting him in the spotlight, but what means more to Wardy, like Westmeath winning Leinster in 2004, or Gary Castle winning Leinster and getting the Ireland club final in 2011, Wardy? Like, I maybe shouldn't ask you a question.
Yeah,
but
look, they're both on a par, but I suppose at the end of the day, when you dust it all down, the club is where you're from, and you can connect with the people that got to represent Gary Castle in All-Ireland Club Final Day. Like, I would have played underage level with 6 or 7 of them lads that ultimately played in All-Ireland Club Final. And I suppose, to come from where we came from, we're 40 years old this year, like, and to be able to kind of look back and say that you played with guys at underage level that went on to win X amount of 8 county championships, or whatever the case may be by now, get to compete in Leinster over a long period of time. Took us 3 years in a row, beating 2 Dublin teams on the way to, as in different years, to get to the promised land of a Leinster club, and then ultimately to go to Croke Park. Like, it's a memory that you'll never ever actually forget, in terms of your own local community, your club, and as what Barry says, it's what the GAA is about, isn't it?
That makes sense, yeah. And it's It is correct, as Barry said. Yeah, the whole point of the podcast was to try and get people to chat about the good times and the memories, and not, every podcast, GAA one, they're all great, but they all have we want our agenda or headlines or controversy. I just wanted to get the memories and the stories and the crack kind of across and get people back kind of talking about it, especially in the times we're in as well. I suppose since you mentioned the club, actually, Bangie as well, the Rochfortbridge, the women's team as well, are kind of going back to the olden days of when they were the dominant force in Westmeath. Is it something to hope to continue in the future years?
Yeah, for years I would have followed the Bridge women footballers for years. And I'm going back to say when you had only 2 teams in Westmeath, where it was Kinnegad and Rochfortbridge. Yeah. And where Bridge ladies contested 7 All-Ireland club finals and they never won one. They were a club of their own. It's only in the last couple of years that we've actually amalgamated with the women. And it's probably, it should have been done years ago, because it brought everybody a lot closer within the village, because for years the women footballers were playing and the men's club wouldn't even know they were playing. Yeah. And now they're going for 3 in a row senior championships this year.
You stole the one off us in 2019 though, Kenneth.
I was waiting for something.
Whether it was stolen or not again, Marty, the referee's result stands at the end of the game.
Bangie is sticking by
the referee. You're forget about it.
Bangie is absolutely sticking by whatever the referee's notebook says at the end, and yeah, I have to admire him for that.
That's the end of it. The Bridge were county champions last year and the year before, and going for 3 in a row this year.
We'll have to try and burst that bubble.
I'll take that.
The best thing, what I'll say about the Rochfortbridge, they're all from the village. They're all from the one parish. There's no foreigners playing with them. When you foreigners playing with a club,
Harry Kelly is wetting himself in the corner here.
We have a wide catchment area. We have a wide catchment area, Kenneth.
Just to clarify, because Jason, you could have your house burnt down after this program is over if it goes out like this. Can we just point out that the word foreigners for Kenneth means someone who wasn't born within a mile of the local GAA pitch. He's basically how they did there at Wally and myself, who basically are associated with 2 town teams. And town teams, obviously, factories and businesses bring in people who suddenly live in the town and want to spread their GAA wings. Just to point out that's what the word foreigners is, in case someone's listening in and think that Kenneth is particularly kind of almost xenophobic and he wants, let him hear of Kenneth. I think you sound like one of John Waters, or you're one, what do you call John Waters' friend. That it sounds a bit like that in the way you carry on, but no, just explain that that's not the case. It's basically anyone not born in Rochfortbridge in Kenneth's eyes is a foreigner.
Does that make my brother a foreigner then?
That's the whole point of it. They're not club people if they're not from your own club.
Does that make my brother an outsider then?
No. Jason, he played all his football in Rochfortbridge, from underage all the way up. Okay. We're not buying in players like...
How many miles do you live within the bridge, Bangie?
8, 9.
That's a big area.
It's a lot closer than Roscommon or Mayo or... Tell you.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I thought you were tighter knit than that now. 8 miles out the road.
I think deep down they are. So maybe doesn't want to admit it here, I suppose. So there's a few questions left, and then if there's time, I mightn't take up your time. There's a few quick fire questions at the end, but I'll ask you these few anyway, because I'm going to call this the banter section, because I didn't make up any of these questions bar one. These all came in from people. So Bangie, the Rochfortbridge lads want to know: are you ever going to referee a game outside the 2 65-yard lines?
If I ever have to, I will.
I'll take that as a quick answer. So, yeah.
That's not nice of your own people to answer that question, Kenneth.
It wasn't them all. It was just a select few.
But I can imagine who the select few are.
Family may or may not have been involved. I won't say anything. Your family and mine.
Yeah, I know well.
Barry, I have to ask you this one, because I've said this to you going by the house before, that you have a famous story which has become iconic on the Two Johnnies podcast that my brother sent in from years ago, where he attended a Samba Soccer camp, and they were promised a Brazilian legend as their coach, and he said that the man who turned up as the Brazilian legend was none other than Barry Kelly.
Yeah, Jason, God, I've forgotten that nearly away. Remember, it was a Samba Soccer camp, the kind of obviously a Brazilian type team to it, and I was secondary school teacher, so I was free, and I think it was Liam Boggs was the man in charge, and Liam was looking for someone to do a bit of coaching. Now, I did play a bit of soccer, Mullingar, but not a whole lot, and but I was asked. I remember the worst thing about it was that we were asked as coaches. We got this, garish yellow tracksuit. You had to wear for the week, and you would not wear it you wouldn't wear it for a bet. But anyway, I didn't realise this, but Ian, your younger brother, was on this camp, but I didn't realise this, that the kids had been told, that these kids were like primary school kids, they'd been told that, they were going to get, Pele's nephew or Revelino or Zico or some such, and at the time, I'd say Ian wouldn't know who I was, but I think a few years later, as referee, and I think Ian was trying to work out that the referee that day is either the first Brazilian referee in Ireland or Westmeath, or else he wasn't actually Brazilian at the time of the coaching camp. I remember as the kids used to ask me at the coaching camp to do some skills, and if I could keep you up even more than 3, I was happy enough. So anyway, yeah. He rang in, and I texted in the 3 Johnnies, and it's actually gas because one of the lads here in the house, Paddy, is a big fan of the 3 Johnnies, and Paddy heard this, and of course,
how many Johnnies?
I'll tell you one more quick one, Jason, in relation to Francis Heady, that you'd know as the Rochfortbridge goalkeeper for the last number of years, and a fine goalkeeper. But the 3 lads here, the twins are 10 and Paddy's 11, but this was only a couple of years ago. So we used to go to Cusack Park nearly if I was refereeing a match, and they tip down to the park, and Maria would drop them down, and then she'd say to them, go and stand behind the goal. So Paul Revel is a good friend of ours, and Paul would do an umpire. Stand behind the goal so that Paul can give an eye on me, and then obviously I couldn't mind him during the game. But anyway, during the game, Francis was in goals, and the 3 boys started to abuse the referee, who was me, and in a light-hearted way, but he didn't realise who they were, shouting in that referee is hopeless and that referee is blind. And every decision they made, the young lads were shouting and roaring in. Now Paul was just laughing, but Francis didn't know who they were, and Francis turned around and said, good God almighty, he said, those young lads behind the goals, they really don't like Barry Kelly, the referee. And Paul would go and tell him, well, actually, the 2 youngest smallest lads are his twin sons. So basically 3 boys are living in the same house as him, and they're just giving him abuse because so anyway, Francis got a great laugh out, but he actually thought they were nearly having a pot at me and way.
A final, Bangie, in Cusack Park last year that Mickey Dan Murta was in the middle. You were meant to be linesman, and 20 minutes into the game and still no sign of you, and then out you popped over the terrace, and this is what the lad said you shouted. You told me 3:30, Mickey Dan, you bollocks.
Yeah, that's correct and right. I can have a fair idea at the bottom left who asked you to ask that question.
I don't know.
The time didn't change that weekend, Jason, either.
Yeah, it actually wasn't.
The time didn't change that. The clocks didn't change that weekend either.
At the time, all the referees and linesmen, we were given tickets.
Okay.
For the game, and on the ticket was the time I arrived for the match. The referee never notified me of the time change.
Okay.
No, I'm standing the ground there.
Okay,
I still did and done a good job for him.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, I'll take your word on that one. So,
imagine waiting for him to do the line in Mullingar Shamrocks and Lomans County Final, Jason. And an incident happened after 4 minutes.
I know. Yeah.
Jason Wardy was on earlier about the county final in 2018 about how good his umpires were and his refereeing abilities. He was reffing a game in Cusack Park not long ago, and neither the referee or his umpires could see a ball going over a black spot. They had to come running to the linesman, was that over the bar? Now, what does that tell you?
Wardy wants
we were too close. We were too close to the action.
Your experience, you should be in the position that you can see these things.
We went by rule and we called in the linesman.
What did the linesman?
Can I just point out here? My wife has just texted me. She's probably listening in, but she said so far on this particular episode, Jason, of the podcast, the quotation of the night is quotation. I would have followed the bridge women for years, and she has typed in afterwards. Doesn't everyone know that, Kenneth?
Yes, Barry.
I think you meant in a football sense, but I think she means in a social sense. And I'd say if you got listeners to listen in now, you could have a lot of people ringing in, Jason, saying that they were highlights when Kenneth followed me, and we won't say it, but we'll leave it at that.
Look, you'll always follow a good side, Barry.
I'll take your word on that one, so for sure. Wardy, I have to ask you this one as well.
Go on, Jason.
David O'Shaughnessy's brother John off the Gary Castle team, as you know well, is married to my cousin. And,
yes, Rose.
Yeah, and when he got word that there was referees coming on, he said, if Wardy is coming on, ask him about scoring the greatest point ever in Westmeath history in an under-16 county final. He is Westmeath's answer to Colm O'Rourke.
Yeah, we played.
Bangie's nearly
funny enough
off the chair there in the corner.
It was Clonbrane, on which I suppose at the time when I was only 16, it basically nearly brought in half of Westmeath from Rochfortbridge, Turtles Pass, and Milltown Pass. And I suppose I would have remembered Bangie would have played minor with Clonbrane on a couple of years before that, and Gary Castle were on the receiving end of a heavy thumping one year, and they brought them to a replay the following year. So by the time we came to under 16, our crew felt as if we needed to give Clonbrane back one or two, but Clonbrane would have got to that final, I think, kind of unexpectedly so, but they did prove difficult to beat on the day. I think it was played in Athlone in 1994, around August or whatever like that. I think the score was something like it could have been 11-5 or 11-6. But I kicked three great ones that day from play all right in the second half. I think I went in for a fourth, but Kevin Burke came and he met me, and he nearly left me out in the bypass, I think, with a belt. But the 3 points and the last one kind of hit off the crossbar and over, so it was sweet, all right, like, you know. Okay, sounds good, yeah. Barry, there's one here. Shocko also threw this one in. He said, ask Barry, would he think that he is Westmeath's version of Kilmallock legend Mike Houlihan with the collar up during his days with Shamrocks?
Mike Houlihan, I remember Mike Houlihan playing vaguely, and Mike Houlihan was a very tough hurler, and the words very and tough wouldn't have come to mind when I was playing either football or hurling in my limited playing career. Certainly tough wouldn't be the word. And actually, the collar up was I can't say I was kind of setting the scene for Eric Cantona or something like that back in the day. But the other two boys here are big Manchester United fans, so they'll be kind of loving that. Like, but no, the collar up was, I don't know, it was just really it wasn't an image thing, it wasn't a style thing. It was just, I don't know what it was. If it wore a collar up, I wasn't on the pitch that often, and for Shamrock seniors anyway to be noticed. Generally had a tracksuit on, so that was part of that.
Okay. And so able to carry a Barry.
Speaking there, Jason, you mentioned there about difficulty with Owen Gorman, but I currently am lucky enough to earn my living in St. Finian's College, and one of my colleagues is another well-known Westmeath GA man, Kevin Hickey, and I had a cause to referee Kevin. This is going back 13 or 14 years ago against...
Is this against Ballymore?
I think of Ballymore, Jason, you know the story. So against Ballymore, and look, Kevin,
he may have sent me a text message.
Yeah, Kevin was never blessed with pace in the first place, but whatever pace he had was gone anyway, and he made 2 yellow card offences, and that wasn't working well at the time, but would have known Kevin very well, and as Wardy says, you have to bring integrity into it, and you know, he still goes on about it this day. It was the only time he was ever sent off in his life, and he was on his home pitch, and the home pitch and going a bit suit Kevin, because the lads will tell you it's a huge pitch, and if you haven't got it in the legs, it'll find you out. It suits lads who are a bit nifty and quick, and you know, and Kevin, now look at Kevin was 27, 28 at the time, and the legs were beginning to go, and he hauled down, I think Louis Mares or Ching Malloy had a bit of pace on him, and they were gone, and he just put them down twice. He was actually lucky there was no black cards back then, because Jason, he'd been gone after the first one, alone the second, but he still goes on about it. It's still a bit of a sore point that he has allowed a minor medal from 1905, which is always the pinnacle of his career, but the lowest point, I think, was the long walk to the Shandonagh dressing room in about 2000, and whatever it was, 6 or 7, and he claimed that it was 2014 or 15, but I can guarantee you he was only in his 20s.
That was actually the last That was the last question I had for you, Barry. So you've kind of answered that one. Yeah, I was going to say he said himself all about that one. So, Bangie, I have two last ones for you, and then I have one last question for the Trevi. Bangie, actually, no, sorry, I have one last question for you. I didn't ask this one either. Ask Bangie about the playoff between Ballymore and Ballinacarrigy. He went to throw up the ball, realised he'd no whistle. What happened next?
Went to go and get the whistle and done my knee. I ref the first half of the match, and I had two linesmen with me, luckily enough, and one lad I couldn't go to because he had two hip replacements not long before that, and the other guy doesn't actually ref football and he does hurling.
Right.
And I had to replace myself with him in the second half, but the game was practically over at half time anyway. It was 14 or 15 points in it.
Did your nephew referee the game, no?
No.
No. Who refereed it in the end?
Cayman Flynn.
Okay.
He ref the senior hurling final this year.
That's okay.
Last year.
That's all right. No, I wasn't sure. Yeah, the boys kind of had most of the story there. So the last question after Trevi, I suppose individually, it's a vital question that I've asked all the footballers, and I've had AFL people and stuff on as well. Niall, if I ask you first, have you ever won anything in the club lotto?
The club lotto, I have never won a shilling, I don't think. I sell a book a week, and bar my mother coming out an odd occasion over the last maybe 20 years, as in maybe she's come out 2 or 3 times. That's the only thing that's ever come off my lotto book.
Right, I'll put you in that. There's a massive group I have so far from all the podcasts of no winners. Then there's a few bestsellers. One of the girls up in Cavan won a sheep. I don't know how she did that. And then Zach Maradi won $4,500 in the Thomas Davis one in Dublin. So that's where I'm at so far with the highlights. Bangie, have you stolen anything or won anything now with the Rochfortbridge Club Lotto?
I've never won any GAA lotto.
Right.
I'd say there's at least, you'd have Thurles Pass, Milton Pass, you have the Downs, Mullingar, do loads of lottos, and I've never once even got 3 numbers or come out in the draw in their Christmas draws or anything.
I thought you just stay within the local community, no?
Yeah, but I mean, I'd always support other clubs.
All right, okay, that's okay. No, I just said I'd ask. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
The reason, Jason, in fairness now, the reason why Bangie supports those local lottos is that he tends to pull more of the local clubs than most of it because the number of matches he referees. So he might have won the lotto officially, but he's won the lotto in terms of matches he referees. And no, Jason, I've never. In fact, I get an email from the Downs every Monday. Tommy Kelly has me in the lotto there, and I get an email every Monday, and I look through it and think, not alone win the main lotto, but I've even won one of the €50 prizes they give out. But I suspect that referees, if they won the lotto, there'd be some, I'd say now, they'd be doing the very best to say, look at, we might just put these numbers back in and draw again because we can't be handing a hit. We can't be handing Ledley him €4,000 or €5,000. Oh, having said that, it could be an investment by a club, really, in a way. You might look after them in the future. Yeah. You better edit that out, Jason. We'll be on court tomorrow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes, I've a couple of quick fire questions if you want, Barry. I know you've another meeting, so if you want to head, that's absolutely grand. You can let me know if you're heading. So, and for Bangie and Niall, if you're not in a rush, there's a couple of these questions if you want to have a go with them. They're just one word, quick fire answers, so you can see how you go with them. And Barry, I can throw in a few if you're not in too much of a rush. So, that's right, Niall. If I ask you first, this is a special referees one. So. Your favourite ground that you've ever refereed in?
My favourite ground, I've refereed in Crow Park, so I suppose your referee there. That's I suppose you can't get better than that in terms of not just the pitch, it's the stadium and the atmosphere and all of that feeds into it. Like, you're not going to. So yeah, without a doubt, Crow Park. Outside of that, I'd have to say that Cusick Park, from a pitch perspective, is probably one of the best in the country. Pleasing to kind of note that there is a bit of need for the grounds to be kind of, I suppose, refurbed and improved, I suppose, because the pitch and the pitch is actually top class there. Yeah. So I in terms of other county grounds, I would actually have Cusick Park as in the pitch right up there in terms of the surface and the pace of the game in there. You get some very good encounters, like Yep. But Cusick Park is right up there with any other county ground. Hard to beat, as I say, refereeing in Crow Park, Okay.
Sounds good.
Just on my one, Jason, I'm lucky enough to referee quite a few, but Fitzgerald Stadium in Killarney. I did referee there twice, but Cork played Tip in a hurling qualifier game in 2004, and you had the kind of mountains in the background, a big crowd present, and it was a summer's day, and Killarney during the summer for a match even, but even without a match, it's obviously a beautiful place to be, but there was a great atmosphere. I remember we stayed over, the umpire himself stayed over after the match that night, and it was just, but the pitch itself and the, it was, they often say, Cork and Kerry players often say, you can't beat a Munster football final in Fitzgerald Stadium in Killarney, so that'll be actually mine. And but Borley's right, Cusack Park is, I actually love refereeing in Cusack Park because, as Borley says, the ground itself, the pitch is, for football and hurling, it's super.
Brilliant, yeah. And Bangie, if I change the question slightly for you to the next one, what's the least favourite ground you've ever had to referee on?
Least favourite ground, I would have to say, I don't like reffing in Delvin.
Delvin, okay. My wife is teaching out there. I let her know that the pitch is no good, not to bring the kids down. So,
no, I won't say. I don't know what it is about Delvin. It just seems to be so open, or something. It's just like a big field, and there's no real atmosphere, I think, when you're down there when you're reffing.
Okay, I'll take that. So, yeah. If I can throw this out to the three of you, or anyone who wants to answer it, the most annoying manager you've ever come up against, club or county-wise.
Or did you want to answer that one?
I need to think about that for a second because you need to be careful with it.
There's a lot of them. I'd say.
Bangie's brought a list for grievances here.
Go on, Marty, off with you.
I have to think for a minute. You actually have me on the spot there for a minute now, to be honest with you.
All right.
Harry, you should have a long list.
Well, sure, Marty, what about Loaf? Marty, what about Loaf?
My history with Luke goes back to 1996, I suppose, when he did pick me for the Westmeath minor panel.
What about Ned?
Right. That explains a lot about red cards. So
challenging. Look, I think broadly speaking, lads, aren't most managers all challenging, especially when it comes to the business end or a knockout game or there's a trophy at stake. Sure, they're all going to be at you, like, you know what I mean? In a sense, that's part of their remit and their gig, like, you know what I mean? So, it's very hard. Like, they're all difficult when there's something at stake, lads. Let's call a spade a spade. And as a referee, you kind of have to get that and not take it kind of too personal. But I suppose, look, you would like to kind of separate what goes on the field. The more than having to make a hard call, lads, you'd like to kind of separate that what goes on the pitch stays on the pitch, and, you know, that you leave it there, like, and it's all done on a best endeavours basis. Like, you're not going to, at the end of the day, lads, it is an amateur sport, and I suppose getting the bit of a ribbon from managers, it actually forms part of it. Like, you know, and it's how you kind of deal with them situations, and once you don't go overboard, like, you're not going to. But yeah. They're all challenging. Every manager is challenging, and I suppose, as I say, when it gets to business end or a trophy, it's like, sure, any manager worth his salt, lads, is going to push you, like, aren't they?
It's never, I suppose, Jason, I think it's fair to say, I think we all would all agree on this, and it's never personal. It's just you happening to be the guy who's holding the whistle or making decisions, but they're not. If they're giving out to you or giving you a rollicking, it's not Bangie or Wardy or Pat Fox or Sean Carroll or JP Reynolds or anyone or myself or whoever. It's not like you, their target. It's just that it's the ref, and they're not questioning your parentage or where you work or where you live or anything like that. It's just that, you know, I go back to what I said at the start, like, it's, you know, it's the passion that people feel and pride they have in the GAA, and that's what makes the organisation so unique, is that the word is kind of right in a way that, you know, you wouldn't feel nearly that the match was a proper match unless at least one manager is probably questioning something they've done. But having said that, I don't think I've ever met a manager, say, on the street the following day, or any of us, where a lad would actually ignore you or a lad would walk by you. Like Tommy Keena from Ballymore is doing a good bit of work for the council in town. I meet him very regularly, particularly during lockdown and the last few weeks, and pass by him. He works a lot with Shane McGovern from the Wood, and I know Shane as well, often refereed Shane. And sure, every time you pass by them, lads are mad for a chat about matches and about this, and you meet Dwayne Maher and another lad from Ballycarry, and has had his fair share of issues with referees, with me indeed. But yet, you know, they never turn it back on you and say, I don't like that fella, he's a bad referee. He's not a bad referee, not. it's never personal. You'd make more friends out of it than enemies, far more.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, the last two questions I have are for any of you as well. If there was one rule you could change in the GAA, what would it be?
The amount of people on the sideline.
Right. You want more of them, is it, Bangie? You do.
Well, there's days you'd want more, and then there's days you want nobody.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The days you go out in the game and you're supposed to have 3 or 4 people on the sideline for me, and next thing you'd look along the sideline and you'd have 20 lads standing up along the side, and they're all wearing bibs.
They're all Marishkas.
They're all Marishkas and Marifornias and.
Fair enough. I'll take that. Wardy, what about you? Is there a rule?
I think 2 things. One thing definitely. I think the pickup as we know it is, as in it, while it was a skill years ago, I think the pace and the movement of the game, I think the pickup would be an assist in terms of getting rid of it, because, just the pace of the game and the movement of the players and all that. I just think that is kind of, and I suppose you see it a bit at ladies football where it does assist them kind of keeping the game moving. Another thing as well is maybe, I suppose, something that kind of, it's a pet hate of mine, having to blow a lad maybe, and he's 7 or 8 meters away when a free kick has been taken and he's not the required distance, but you actually have to, blow it. So I suppose things like that, where the advantage then turns around to the opposing team, so maybe things like that, where like the free kick, if he's 7 to 10 yards away, like why should it be 14? And then it's if it's 11 or 12, it's into that judgment territory and it's harsh, and something can happen then as a result of that, and it's something that I think referees in general are not consistent with, because some referees, based on their style, and we all have different styles, will let that 7 to 10 yards go, and then other lads mightn't let 13 to 14 meters go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sense, yeah.
Where the judgment territory. So I just think them little things, what I would call as small fry, would actually assist the game in terms of keeping the fluidity of the game going and moving, and I suppose it removes more decisions from the referee. Do you know what I mean? So I would be in very much the territory of how do we keep the game going as much as possible, without obviously, foul play has to be penalised or whatever like that. But I think anything that assists kind of general play and the continuation of general play at a pace is very much would be an enhancement in terms of the actual product of the game and the spectacle to spectators. You know what I mean?
Yeah, makes
sense. But they're
yeah.
just little things, in terms of it, I'd look at them as enhancements rather than kind of
changes.
Exactly. That just, but I suppose the GAA are ongoing, looking at rules, and they are trying to improve things, I suppose, over on an annual basis now. I suppose the implementation of the black card and hurling is kind of welcome in a lot of areas, because I suppose cynical play has come into hurling over the last 2 years, especially at the top end, where there's literally a puck of the ball between the top 6 teams in the country.
Yeah, that makes sense,
I'd actually welcome the black card in hurling, because the hurling has got so fine margins at that top level that if that cynical play was permitted, that it actually could be a game changer in terms of someone winning the game. So it should be tackled and addressed like that,
Okay, good, yeah.
Just on that, Jason, we've made quite a few rule changes, in particular in football, in the last good few years, and I think they probably reached a point now where we can let it settle down. But I'm not convinced that the forward mark is any addition to the game. I think no harm to mark, midfield mark, kick-out mark, but I know for referees it does cause problem, because there's a good bit to it. It has to travel 20 metres, kick from outside the 45. It's a bit to it, and I don't know, I think it brought in a view that a lad would make a great catch up in the air, but I think we've seen this year's or last year's championship that the couple that were given was a lad, there's no great skill in a lad being in front of his man, getting a nice chip pass into his chest, and the defender is basically, there's nothing he can do, because if he commits to it and it goes over his head, it's a goal. So I don't know, I think that's come in now, and it wasn't utilised that much in the championship. I think Paddy Small, or the Dublin corner forward, he was very good at it. He got a good few of them, but I don't think there's a massive skill in it. And they'll come when an All-Ireland final or a Leinster final or a Munster final be won by a lad catching a handy catch 25 yards out and popping over the bar to win and score, and that'll be the end of it, because there's lots of skills in the game, and that's a very mediocre skill with a far greater reward level that's out of proportion completely. And I think it was rushed in, and I don't know many who are big fans of it, either referees or indeed supporters. Like, no one does a big clap or a cheer when a fella does a handy catch and pops it over the bar from a free. Like, that's basic. That's basic stuff. I'd like to see that one gone, but other rule changes have improved the game, I think. But probably all have challenged referees as well, because we're the ones that implement these rules, and
that makes sense. Yeah. No. Last question. I'll ask the three of you one by one, and just one name is all I need here. It's a tricky enough one. The best GAA player ever in your lifetime. One name. Now, obviously, Niall is 20-something, so he has less years, obviously, than the other two boys. So, Bangie, who's the greatest GAA player ever in your lifetime?
I'm going to go for Matt Connor.
Okay.
Awfully the backbone.
That's what I'm going for.
Lovely. Wardy, what about you?
The root doesn't fall far from the tree. I suppose, look, I would think pound for pound, and I can't relate to Matt Connor because I think he's a career finished at 24, and I was only in nappies when he was, so I only have TV clips to kind of go by Matt Connor, but he was a true great based on what I saw. But I suppose in terms of what I've seen in my lifetime, I would find it hard to beat Peter Canavan all in terms of just what he produced for Tyrone year in, year out. Put himself through an awful lot of pain, I suppose. His direct approach, the variety of positions he could command when Tyrone were in trouble out the field, he could come out. I suppose, remember that All-Ireland semi-final against Armagh, where Owen Mulligan was going to take the thing, and Canavan just kind of come over calmly and ever so slightly and gradually use his experience just to kind of, he didn't take the ball. He just, whatever way, the ball rolled out of Owen Mulligan and he took ownership and kicked that score. Like, do you know what I mean? So for me, Peter Canavan, I would have been able to follow his progress from, say, under 21 right up to the end of his career. And I just think pound for pound, just very hard to beat him.
Okay, brilliant. And Barry?
Just to give you two, I'll give you one hurling. Tommy Walsh from Kilkenny in hurling was just always 9 out of 10. More than that, just phenomenal play anywhere. Always give his best. Club or county, and whenever I had the pleasure of refereeing the next man, I just think he has transformed the game. And I think Cluxton is just, because he's new goalkeeping and he's changed the profile of the game in terms of retaining possession and leadership, and the two of them I think would stand out. But look at Matt Connor and Canavan, all good shouts too. But Brian Howard and very close too. Or Brian Fenton rather. Brian Fenton's record is, if Brian Fenton keeps going the next 3 or 4 years, he'll put the likes of Jack O'Shea and those in the shade, and that's, I never thought that'd be said, to be honest.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Lads, look, I have to say huge thanks to you for coming on and giving up your evening. Sorry I kept you so long, and Barry, apologies if your next meeting has started. So no, I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for coming on, Wardy and Bangie and Barry, and
thanks, Jason.
Thanks,
Jason.
Mind
Thanks, Jason.
Take it easy.
Good man.
Good luck. Bye.
Bye.
As this is the final slice of Loaf 1 of the Loaf-of-Bread GAA podcast, there's a couple of things we'd like to say before we finish. Firstly, to the more than 2,500 people who have subscribed over the platforms in under 20 weeks of doing this, a big thank you. And to all the guests, Westmeath 2004 captain David O'Shaughnessy, Uachtar All-Ireland winners Kieran Hanley, Eddie O'Sullivan, Paddy Walsh and Enda Tierney, Wicklow manager and Kildare legend Davy Burke, Derry and AFL legend Chrissy McCaig, Westmeath Camogie Gems, Pamela Greville, Mairead McCormack, Sheila McGrath and Creever McCrossan, Meath all-round heroes Mickey Honey Badger Burke and Sean Tobin, Clare and Adelaide star Ailish Considine, Kerry future All-Ireland star Owen Fitzgerald, Longford legends Paddy Cullum, Danny Mimna and my own cousin Dara Doherty, Leinster LGFA president and Moat Ladies founder Trina Murray, Cavan stars Lauren Ellis, Niamh Riley and Ciara Finnegan, Leitrim all-star Zach Moradi, Meath All-Ireland winners Vicky Walls, Sarah Powderly and Sean Ennis, Offaly captain and gentleman Anton Sullivan, Westmeath and Irish rugby star Katie Heffernan, Lockheed legends Emer Boyle and Christine Leverty, Carlow stars Edel Hayden, Cleanan O'Shea and Navian Gilmartin, Irish, Munster, Cork and Grand Slam hero Tomás O'Leary, Offaly Camogue and radio star Anne-Marie Guinan, and then finishing with refereeing top dogs Barry Kelly, Niall Ward and Ken Gunning. When I started out, the plan was to have these chats in a way that I wanted them to go, which was relaxed, stress-free, no headline grabbing, good fun, memories made and remarkable moments recalled. But the expectation was I would be interviewing the likes of my brother and the other local lads. Little did they expect I'd interview GAA legends in Ireland and abroad. Players who have won more than 250 medals between them at different levels, more than 10 All-Star awards, refereed more than 10 county or All-Ireland finals, lifted more than 25 major titles, countless dual players, some have won a Grand Slam and had Sevens glory with their country at rugby, played at the highest levels of the AFL, an AFLW Grand Final winner in Australia, a founder of their own GAA club, someone who survived being born or won the world's major wars to go on and win in All-Ireland, captains of clubs, counties and countries, and one even being the star of his own Paddy Power tweet. But what they all had in common was the GAA, the love of the game and the memories they have from it. Whether it was running on a sand track for Paddy, giving school kids the fingers behind the goals, being voted Man of the Year in your town, celebrating with flower pots in the nightclub, being babysat by your manager on a night out, winning the club lotto, giving lifts to fans, getting clamped, having your own Instagram fan page, feeding drink to ducks in a bar, or forgetting your whistle just as you're about to throw the ball into a big match, the stories just poured out. And to all the guests I say a huge Gura Mila Mahagwiv. It wouldn't have happened without you. But there are a couple of stories over the past 20 weeks that got me thinking. The GAA community is more than just those of us who are here in the island. But what we often forget is that for many reasons in history, some reasons which are centuries old and some more modern, is that the GAA community is very much a global one. Going back through the old photos I have from travelling, I found the ones of me bringing around some friends from England. Portsmouth fans, absolute legends. They both teach in Oman now. I brought them to see 4 games in Croke Park over 2 days, All-Ireland quarter-finals. They got to see the best of the GAA in Donegal vs Galway and that famous Michael Murphy knockdown, and Fermanagh putting it up to Dublin for a while in Croke Park. And they also got to see some of the one-sided stuff, such as Kerry's 7-goal demolition of Kildare. But what stood out from the photos was outside the Croke Park Museum and looking through all the club crests abroad. How many of the clubs abroad do we even know exist, or what do we know about them? Is it all Irish that are playing out there? Is it the same as the GAA club here? Is the banter and the crack the same? So many questions rang through my head looking at that photo and the possibilities it had. And so, combined with my own fortune of having been to near on 100 countries, I thought that maybe, given the lack of travel we find ourselves in at the moment, that I could find a way to bring some of the clubs back home. And so began my quest for Loaf 2, GAA Global. Emails, data collection, WhatsApps, over weeks and weeks, time zone issues. Oh Jesus, yeah, we'd love to come on. Do I need to put on makeup, Brenda, for this? I've had every question under the sun. But one thing that was common from every club who got back to me: we want in. We want to feel like we're in the GAA at home. When can we come on? We want the GAA world to know that we even exist. We want to show how the Irish and the locals can mix it up together here abroad. Since the World Games in Waterford in 2019, the GAA clubs globally have been somewhat stifled with COVID and other issues. While the World Games was a ridiculous success, as pointed out by all who attended, the clubs just want a bit more of a connection that can last, that can let their families that maybe they haven't seen in years hear, that doesn't disappear after a final whistle or a night out, that they can listen back to themselves and know their families and friends, and perhaps for the first time ever the GAA community worldwide can listen in and hear their stories too. And that is what it is all about. Loaf 2, GAA Global, a GAA podcasting first on this scale. It has never been done before. What started as a select few messages with a fingers crossed attitude, expanded by word of social media and otherwise, to grow to now more than 44 countries as I record this. It seems as though, judging by messages that I've got, that potentially more than 50 GAA clubs worldwide will be involved in this. So here's the plan. Starting from the week after next, you will get 2 weekly slices, not the usual one. Each club has their own slice with a little bit of history at the start as usual. The chats are focused on the key elements of the club, from membership to pub crawls and beyond. The quickfire questions round are built to be localised. Someone in Australia may have to make the devastatingly hard choice between Fair City and home and away, that kind of thing. But what you will hopefully hear in all the chats are the same things that I heard: passion, pride, crack, a sense of place. For some, a rekindling of an old graw for the game from back home. For others, a newfound desire to take part in a sport they once never knew existed. To quote the great Jason Statham, some felt hurling was a cross between hockey and murder. But that's the beauty of it all. You'll meet some who have played county level and some who have turned up after a few pints and felt it was a good idea and immediately regretted it, but stuck at it. The spectrum is very wide, and that's what makes this amazing. So whatever you do not miss out on Loaf 2 GAA Global. This could be a once in a lifetime podcast. But you could do one favour for the clubs. Spread the word. I come into this podcast with the attitude of, I don't care if nobody listens as long as I'm enjoying it and so are the people I'm chatting to. And that's still how it remains. But these clubs are dying to have their work known and their voices heard, no more than any GAA club at home. So if you can, share this podcast to 1, 2, 5, 10 people. Share it to the family WhatsApp, share it around. It could be someone who has a family member abroad playing with a club, someone who might want to listen to something different, or just someone who might be reliable. It might even be somebody who may have someone abroad who they don't even know is playing for a club yet. So thank you for listening to Loaf 1, and I hope to have everybody and more back for Loaf 2 in just a few short weeks. For now, I'll leave the last words to the man whose speech inspired the entire podcast in the first place, and I will talk to you again in 2 weeks' time.
We're going well, lads. But, lads, bring the bit of fucking devilment into your play the next day now, and the tigerish play. The discipline, the tightness, the rough and tumble stuff out around the middle of the field, the fucking breaking ball. A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lads. A grain of rice will tip the scale. But you'll have to get steely tough upstairs, and you must be willing to fucking break your gut. You were fucked over the line twice. Fucked over the line like you'd catch a fucking loaf of bread and fucked you over the line with his shoulder. And what that does is, it lifts the opposition. We don't want to see no Westmeath man fucked about. Is that clear now, Alan? No more. You'll have to be closer. Closer to fuck. We'll have to fucking crash into these fellas and test out their fucking pulse. Because I'm telling you, lads, these fellas will play good football if they're allowed. Give me one fucking guarantee, each and every one of you, that you're going to be tighter, that you're going to be more disciplined, that you're going to be more tigerish, and that you're going to take the fucking game to these fellas. That these fellas will get such a fucking shell shock next Saturday evening that we'll put them back in their fucking asses for fucking 10 years. Alright, lads.
To get in touch, find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok and Facebook, or email us loafofbreadpod@gmail.com. Garamila Mahagriv. Slánagi.